you mentioned just before that there's a few different ways that you can go through sperm donation. There's almost like an anonymous route, an open route. What is the situation like? Obviously, I've not been there myself. Is it essentially like a catalogue of people? I don't know how it works.
Yeah, no, so I appreciate your sensitivity. I could see what you're trying not to kind of say the wrong thing, so I appreciate it. But so it varies. So in the UK now, since 2005, we've not been able to donate anonymously. So that means that now, because of the time past, there are no kids being born now that are from an anonymous donor.
Right.
In America, I believe, I don't know. We stayed in the UK, but so my knowledge of other countries isn't great. But I know in Eastern Europe, in Europe, in certain places you can donate anonymously. Two of them, the major places that people in this country, if they're not seeking UK-based ones, they usually will go to America or to Scandinavian banks because they have such big pools of sperm donors because it is financially incentivized and stuff. Whereas in the UK, you only get expenses. Usually in the UK, again, to my knowledge, but generally people, and this is in our case, people are donating because of altruistic reasons, usually because they're like, they want to give something back to the world, or so the ones we chose from is by and large it's because their wife had gone through stuff and needed an egg donor and they wanted to give back to try and like repay the gift that they were given from someone else, but on the other side.
Amazing.
So in our case, so I'll talk, but I know certainly in America, you can get a lot of detail. Some places will be like baby picture only of the donor. Other places will have an adult picture and then a recording of their voice. Loads of details. So I know there's an American guy who shares a story. He and I kind of started around the same time to raise awareness. He went through a very similar thing, but I remember him saying, because they had so much choice over there, he had like an Excel spreadsheet of all these donors, and he said he just got into this analysis paralysis. He couldn't make a decision because he had so many that were like the ideal candidate. Whereas we decided not just to stay in the UK, which massively restricts your choice anyway. We decided to stay at our own clinic, which had an in-house bank, which hugely reduced our choices. And because so basically, once you choose to go that route, two things happen. First of all, you have to make your selections on what you want from a donor, like literally like biometric stuff, like so height, weight, eye color, etc., etc. But then you can put other things like academic attainment, lifestyle, etc., etc. We decided that it wasn't about trying to replicate me by choosing every trait physically that I had, because a big part of that was me having made peace with the fact that I couldn't pass on my DNA. So there was no point for me trying to recreate me, because that ship had sailed and I'd come to that acceptance.
I was going to ask you that question actually. Did you sort of pick the sort of selections based on as close to you as possible?
Yeah, I look, I'm not saying that's wrong. Like, I know people now that still do that.
I can understand it from both sides.
Yeah, we went middle for diddle. We just chose, like, so my eyes are blue, my wife's are green. We just ticked like blue, green, grey, like just I think probably everything except brown, because it wasn't something that we had, like. And then hair, we just went like both of our hair colours plus what the middle would be all the way through. Now, like one big thing is when you're going through this route to parenthood, you like when you have babies, like people do it, they stick their head in the pushchair. Oh, where do they get that? Like, for example, my daughter's ginger, my son's got beautiful curly hair. I don't have either, but neither does my wife. But they'll go, oh, where do they get their ginger hair from, or these beautiful curls? It just happens. You kind of have to reverse engineer that when you're going through these selections. And it's a very subjective thing. And there's, again, nothing against anyone who chooses perhaps a different skin tone to what they and their partner are. But for us, we were always going to choose white because we wanted to almost you do, like, we wanted some form of resemblance. That's why we were going
Yeah.
middle of our characteristics, because we thought our route is complex enough as it is. We're going to have a complex story for the rest of our lives, and any hopeful children's lives, because this is still a long way before then. But we didn't want that initial thing, that resemblance, to be obvious from the outset. So for us, it was like we wanted the kids to roughly resemble us, and actually, as it happens, all the time, I get people telling me how much my son looks like me. Even people who know our journey, they say it. And I think that comes down to, not to make fun of it or make light of it, but they say there's that whole like internet thing of like, oh, pets who look like their owners. But it's time spent with people, and it's not just that. It's like I say, the nurture. It's the values that I'm passing on, the habits, gait, walking style, just everything. The kids mirror and mimic, and the way like I dress him is similar to how I dress myself, and like style his hair. So that's where all that comes from. And of course, like, things like they learn social cues from us. So the way I smile, when I smile. So it's all those things that are mirrored. That's where the resemblance. And my wife actually gets the because no one ever says it about her. And biologically they are hers. They never say it about a daughter either, but not everyone, but a lot of people say about like our son resembling me. So there you go.
What sort of feeling does that give you when you get those comments about your son?
Just like nothing really. I'm pretty, I'm pretty neutral. I don't.
Right.
Yeah, certainly it doesn't trigger me. I think it's whether that's maybe what you, but also I don't feel like proud, because I can almost pass for his dad, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
For me, it's just it's just a comment. I say, I usually joke it off and say, so like, for example, I mentioned when people stick their heads in your pushchair and that when you've got babies. So at first, when I didn't really know how to take that or deal with it, I would often just go, I think probably from my wife's granddad, he had really curly hair, for example, blah, blah, blah. But then I went through this stage, I think it's part of my kind of healing as well, where I would just start telling strangers, we used sperm donors, it's probably from them, mostly to the older generation. And then, because partly it was a bit like, you need to learn it's not okay just to stick your head in a pushchair, especially post-COVID, because our babies were COVID babies, and just ask these intrusive questions, and you see their reaction. But it's education for them as well. But then I kind of moved past that, back into the laughing it off phase, or the kind of, unlucky for him type thing. I don't need that validation from people to say, that he might look like me, to almost prove to myself that he's my son, because I know he's my son, because I'm there every day, I'm present, and I'm show up in other ways. So that's what, I get my feedback from him. I don't need it from others.